is a product called Biomemedic. Now, what's really interesting to me about this is that, you know, I didn't really know that there was a legitimate solution to the glyphosate problem. Dr. Zach Bush does have a product called Restore, which I found out is it's a similar product to what we're now working with. It kind of works on similar and dissimilar principles. So it's not exactly the same thing, but I was like, wow, okay, that's amazing. There's other people that have been working on this issue. The Biomedic to me is a very interesting thing because basically the research is proving, basically the thing that I want to share with you about this is definitely not a sales pitch, this is an informational thing. Basically what I came to find out that got me excited about this is that there was a research study involving a group of people in a preclinical study. It was a double-blind, placebo-controlled preclinical study, and they took a group of people through a 6-week process, and these people were eating a standard American diet. They didn't change their diet whatsoever, and as I mentioned, over 75% of that food supply is contaminated with glyphosate. Who knows what else they were eating, right? They didn't take them off their diet. They wanted to see, will this do what we're hoping this does? So they didn't want to alter that whatsoever. They wanted to get empirical results. And they put them on a certain dosage of Biomedic for 6 weeks straight. They tested them before, then tested them after. And what the research findings showed is that they were on average able to reduce up to 74% of glyphosate in their body within that 6-week period. Now this is really, really interesting, and there's a lot of, and I think it's a 5-ingredient product, and each ingredient, the deeper you go into like what the mechanism is, why they chose this, it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting idea. So that in of itself was pretty amazing when you factor in that these people were already putting glyphosate in their body while they were doing the study. And they were able to reduce up to 74% of glyphosate in their body in that 6-week period. It's like, okay, this is some kind of alchemical, non-linear kind of thing going on here, because that doesn't make rational, like logical sense. But that's what the research showed. Another thing that it showed is that it reduced the exact same amount of CRP, C-reactive protein, from the body. Has anyone heard this term? Anyone familiar with this term? C-reactive protein is one of the main biomarkers for heart disease and the cardiovascular degeneration. I found that interesting because I never really thought about a cross connection between glyphosate and heart disease. Now, to me, it's like, oh yeah, that would be an obvious systematic issue because everything works in systems. Nothing is isolated. Your liver's not isolated from your kidneys, from your heart, from your brain, from your nervous system, your immune system. They all work within a harmonic, right? Like your hormones, they're all harmonic. They all work together in a communication system. But I just found that interesting and then realized like, wow, okay, so glyphosate has a lot to do with the cardiovascular system as well. And we actually, that's something that's kind of a bit of like a little bit of there's a few steps to that. One of the things we do know, one of the things I know for sure, which makes that make sense to me, is that it's microbiome dependent. And it has something to do with bacterial infections, because one thing we know about root canals is that 90+% of people with certain types of cancer and heart disease conditions all had root canals. I found that really interesting when I dug deep into that, when I was doing tons of research on dentistry malpractice and root canals and mercury amalgam fillings and even teeth extractions, wisdom tooth extractions. I was like, whoa, this is not natural, and this is definitely has some serious implications. One of the things that happens with root canals is that you can't sterilize a root canal. It's impossible. That's been proven. You cannot but that's what they tell you they're doing it for, right? You're sterilizing the tooth because you have a bacterial infection and it's going to systemically spread, and we got to get that tooth out because the tooth is dying and decaying, and we got to get it out there and we got to fill it in. That's the whole theory. Just like glyphosate, the whole thing is predicated on a theory that this is like a weed killer. But you can't actually say it's a weed killer because of 0.001% of it actually does what they're trying to tell you that it's there for. It's either unbelievable ignorance. Like, we're in the dark ages of medical quackery.
But what is the alternative to root canals?
Well, there are alternatives to it. And I mean, one of the alternatives is that you don't need a root canal. And and you can get that. There are biological, the alternatives that you talk to a holistic biological dentist, and you get someone who specializes in that, because there are really amazing extraction methods. That's a little bit of a long. I actually have a whole thing in my first book, the bigger book there, a whole thing on root canals and mercury amalgam fillings if you want to go a little deeper into that. I pointed that out to draw an example though, and to say that there is some kind of connection with our microbiome and our beneficial bacteria, and somehow with glyphosate interfering with that, and that has something to do with cardiovascular health and the C-reactive protein reduction. And then the other thing that they found out in that study is that, which I found, and it ties all this together, is that there is a repair and regeneration effect on the microvilli of our small intestine from that research study, which I don't know necessarily if they were intending to do, but there is the wheat germ extract. A lot of people ask about this ingredient, the wheat germ, because they're like, I'm celiac, I'm gluten intolerant. What you need to know about that is that it's a fractionalized wheat germ extract that has been shown to have no glutenaceous effect whatsoever. It's a fractionalized wheat germ extract, and apparently that wheat germ extract is the mechanism behind the microvilli coming back to life. So I wanted to make that point because that's super important. And then, I mean, we could go deeper into this. That's beyond the scope of what I really want to drive in here. What I want to drive in is the point that we have a solution to one of the biggest epidemics that we're facing that not that long ago, I didn't know we had a solution to, quite honestly.